According to some analytics, as many as 70% of our young adults who graduate from colleges and universities don't connect with the local church following their graduation. This is sobering and disturbing. Today on Ministry in Motion, we have three young adults, Naomy, Rodrigues, Jorge, Mendoza, and Sara, Devaraj, who are fast approaching their graduation, and they'll share their insights into how to bridge the gap so that young adults will connect with a local congregation. Chaplain Duawne Starling will also share his expertise. Our topic today is nurturing and connecting with young adult graduates. You're watching Ministry in Motion, where we explore best practices for your ministry in the 21st century. Naomy, Jorge, Sara and Chaplain Duawne, we're so pleased that you're on Ministry in Motion. Thanks for joining us. There's a topic that we really want to look at with you, and this topic is after you graduate from college or university, how you can be connected with your local church, with a local church so that you really bond in. So let me just go around our semicircle to begin with. What are you studying and when do you expect to graduate?
Thank you once again for having us here. I'm studying intercultural communications and political studies, so double major and double minor in music and international relations at Washington Adventist University, and I will be graduating this spring 2020.
Wow, that's good. Congratulations in advance.
Thank you so much.
How about you, Jorge?
I have an associate's degree in psychology. Right now I'm getting my bachelor's in theology at Washington Adventist University. And I am on track to graduate next fall of 2020.
Good, excellent. And Sara?
So like Jorge and Naomi, I also attend Washington Adventist University. I'm pursuing a triple major, so in biochemistry, political studies, and an honors interdisciplinary studies. And I plan to graduate May 2020.
So what are you doing with all your spare time?
I am on shows.
All right. Thanks again. And Chaplain Duawne,
yes,
thank you for putting these students together for us,
yes,
and your ministry at the university.
Thank you so much.
Now, when you graduate, do you see yourself going home, whatever you conceive home to be?
Well, for me, as being an international student, that is definitely something I see myself doing from the islands of Cape Verde. And I do see myself going back home, perhaps talking more on a church level, though. Before I go, I do plan on pursuing perhaps my master's degree. And home now is the town where I am, Takoma Park. And I do attend church there, Sligo Church. And I have been pretty much involved there. So I see myself, continuing that involvement with the church after I graduate, since I'll still be around.
Good. Sara, how about you?
So home for me has always been here in Maryland. I grew up in Beltsville. I recently moved to Bowie, and I love living here to the point where, my mom was actually in the Navy for a year, and she moved to Texas, and I actually attended Washington Adventist University and stayed in the dorm my freshman year. So home is here. I don't think I'm going to move outside of home. If it happened. Wherever God leads, I would go. But I love being home, and this is home for me.
Good. Jorge, you're studying theology.
Yes.
And I got an idea what that means, but you tell us.
Well, I'll go wherever I'm hired.
Yeah.
I do have a strong desire to live in Houston or Texas, Southwest area, but I would love to begin a ministry here in this area and later in life move that way where it's warmer. Yeah.
Okay, I got the warm-up bit.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. But I'm sure wherever the Lord leads.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, how would you describe your connections as you've gone through university or college? How would you describe your connections with Christianity and the Seventh-day Adventist Church? Whoever wants to go first.
Okay.
Well, I've been really fortunate to have attended Adventist education since kindergarten until now. And each of my schools has been associated with an Adventist church. So from kindergarten to 8th grade, I attended Beltsville Adventist School, and so they have an association with Beltsville Adventist Church. So a lot of stuff we did was at Beltsville, but at the time I was also attending Capital Memorial Church, which is where I was born and raised. My parents actually still attend that church. And then when I later went to Tacoma Academy for high school, I transitioned to Sligo, Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I became really involved with Sligo. I've been involved wherever I've been, but Sligo is really where my Christianity and my Adventism faith came into action. Okay. And it's still where I have my roots placed now. It's still where I'm engaged. It's still where I attend. It's still where I'm involved. And so I'm really grateful for that opportunity that they provided for me, and I'm grateful that I can actually take action with my faith.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent.
I don't know if you.
So-
Jorge, we're all looking at you.
I've kind of had an in and out connection with the Adventist church specifically. I grew up in the foster care system, so there were some periods where I lived with my foster parents were Adventist, and then other times where I moved in, they weren't Adventist, so I just kind of had to adjust to wherever I was. But I got reconnected with the Adventist church when I was around 17 and had just become a Christian a year before then. So now I'm very connected with the Adventist church. I'm an elder at my church and teach Sabbath school every week, and it's become a huge part of my life.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yes, and I can definitely speak on what you just shared, being teaching Sabbath school every week as well. I'm a seed leader at Sligo Church, a youth leader. So I have been pretty much involved with that, the youth ministry, outreach and socials that we do to engage the youth ministries, in not only at church, but in our community as well. And as a whole, as a music minor and just as part of the family that I come from, music is something that's very big for us. So the music ministry is also another thing I have found myself involved both at Sligo and at WAU as well. So those are the areas that I see, I have been contributing to. And even when I was back home, I also used to serve in different capacities with adventurers and pathfinders. So overall, I would say that, those different ministries and outreach opportunities is what have been connecting me to my home church.
Right, yeah. Now, Chaplain Duawne, I think
Yes.
this might be a question that you'll be very interested in, because I'd like to ask these young adults, in terms of Adventist education, and particularly your experience at Washington Adventist University, like the church does a lot of research on how the Adventist education contributes positively to young students. What has been your experience going through Washington Adventist University? Has it helped you on your journey, your spiritual journey with Jesus?
I must say, definitely. I cannot wait for this.
She's smiling.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Firstly, just the experience of being in a Christian educational system at all, because back home, the only Christian education I had was kindergarten. And then, I went to a public high school and primary school and then high school. And then for the majority of it, I was back home, as I said. And then I just came for the last 6 months of my high school years. And I went to Tacoma Academy, as Sara mentioned earlier. And it was just a great experience because I was like, what, we get to go to chapel in the middle of the school, hours. And it was just amazing for me. And Washington Adventist University was another one of that, bridge connection, allowing me to apply everything that I am or everything that you learn at church. And sometimes if you don't attend Christian schools, you get to do all these things at church, but when you go to school, sometimes it's kind of hard to fit in or apply. You have Christian clubs, etc., but it's different. But the whole university, you get to apply that for the whole university institution. And that was just so amazing to me, how we get to work with the community and apply everything that we claim and proclaim to be for the family, the university family as well.
Good. How's it been for you guys?
For me, obviously, every class that I take is about God,
Yeah.
very directly. Studying there has helped me to really understand what I believe, to reason with what I believe, some things that I took for granted before and just assumed that I should believe. I've been able to be challenged and dig deeper in those beliefs. I enjoy going to an Adventist institution, a university. The one thing that I wish more students took advantage of the Adventist structure and opportunities. I'd say we have a pretty diverse community at WAU.
Yes.
So not everyone there is Adventist and not everyone there is a Christian. But everyone there is in an important stage in their life where this is a perfect opportunity for them to learn what they believe and dig deeper into that as they're building a foundation for the ethics and morals and just the foundation of the rest of their life.
So for me, I've been in school longer than, I haven't been in school at this point, and it's been the place where I've had a lot of breakdowns, but it's ultimately been where I've had a lot of breakthroughs. And I don't think I would have had those breakthroughs without my Adventist education background. In high school, I had teachers that were always, teaching me about God and teaching me the importance of who I was. And I feel like if I had not learned that, I wouldn't realize my worth and my potential and what I had instilled within me that God had given me to overcome obstacles that came my way. It also gave me a great family of friends, friends that would uplift me, friends that had the same morals as, I did. And like Jorge mentioned, there are also students that aren't Adventist, but you get to really learn about other religions, about how other people live, and it helps you understand the world on a bigger level. It helps you be more understanding, it helps you recognize what's special about what you believe and what's also special about what they might believe, And I loved being part of the Adventist system, like growing up, and I would not be where I am without it. The teachers and the faculty that I've had, they pushed me, they encouraged me, they empowered me, and I don't think I would have gotten that from any other education system in this world. I think a lot of times when I've felt the most down or broken, I've always had people to go to at school. And that is something that I treasure and I value, and the faculty members and teachers that I've met along the way are family to me now. And I go to them for advice. To this day, I know I can go to the principal of Tacoma Academy and ask her for advice about, leadership and being a woman in leadership. And those are bonds that I'm going to value forever and that empower me to continue going on with the path I'm on.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Chaplain Duawne, we've got three wonderful candidates here. Clearly, Jesus, Christianity, and Seventh-day Adventism is a high priority in their lives.
Yes.
As students under pressure, getting ready for graduation, this is just wonderful. But one of the issues that we're facing in the church, according to some analytics, is that there is a gap between finishing college or university and connecting with your next local church. Unfortunately, there's a lot of young adults that at this stage in their lives are falling between the seats. And this is really what I want to talk to you about. I want to get your insights and your thoughts. The other questions were preliminary so that our viewers can know what kind of people you are.
Yes.
Wholesome, godly, and if I can call you kids, you're just great. So that connection with the church, what do you anticipate? And Chaplain, what do you see the needs of students after they graduate and connecting with the local church? Please be honest. What are you looking for, and how do we bridge that gap?
You shared something very interesting when you said, I think you said some analytics indicate that 70% of college students or university students leave afterwards.
They can, yes.
And recently we had a conference at Washington Advanced University where we're talking about, the 21st century, young adults, youth, and how, the church can involve them and how can we become active parts of it. And one thing that I shared actually was that sometimes we use Adventist education, especially colleges, as our last stop on the train. And after that, you find many of us dispersing to different locations, because perhaps it could be we went back home and the church is not the same. But one thing that came to mind was that, as I was thinking about this, was, for example, for me, as I go back home, of course it's not going to be the same, this is America, Cape Verde, 2 different countries. But what we can do, and for us especially, as we're very much involved, is sometimes take that with us. It could be that you're just an addition to the team when you go back home, but it could also be that you're just implementing something new. So sometimes we use that as an excuse, like, oh, the setting is different, they work differently here, but we are a piece of wherever we have gathered from, the place we were at. So coming back shouldn't be an issue in a sense of not being reintegrated or being immersed in our church back home. You can just bring that with you and implement it where you go.
Okay. Thanks, Naomi.
For me, it's an interesting time in the Adventist church right now with a lot of hot button issues. The last several years, I've invested myself in the Adventist church, my time and resources. I think...
can I interrupt? What are some of the hot button issues that you see being issues for young adults that could cause the gap?
Yeah, so I've been following the women's ordination topic for the last couple of years. I was in the library on the computer watching this last year's annual council. And you've asked me to speak honestly, it's pretty disappointing for me.
Okay.
I consider myself an Adventist, but first I consider myself a Christian. And I take very seriously living the gospel and working my whole life in the framework of gospel. And I'm committed myself to the Adventist church, but unfortunately I feel like it's kind of drifting away from that message, especially when it comes to treating people equally. The fact that women cannot be ordained in the Adventist church. And even during the annual council, there were a couple conferences or unions that mentioned if women can't be ordained, then they were also not going to ordain anyone. And they were still held under the category of out of compliance. Obviously, they're making an effort to kind of come to a happy middle ground, and the church as a whole is kind of rising up against them, is kind of how I see it.
Yeah.
That's disappointing to me that members, leaders in the church can't respond to their own conscience. And if they do, there's a fear of being out of compliance and whatever consequences come with that. That's pretty disappointing to me.
Do you mind if I ask you a follow-up question?
Sure.
So, commissioning doesn't cut it. Commissioning women doesn't resolve the issue for you?
I understand the Bible to say, in Christ, there's no longer Jew or Gentile, male or female, slave or free. If men can be ordained and are ordained, I think women should have equal access to that.
So, I guess what I'm interpreting you saying, it's if the church is going to put a stake in the ground on some of these issues, it could be at a price.
Yes, it will be at a price.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for your honesty.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Sara?
Yeah, no, I agree with Jorge. I have a lot of peers that have left the church, unfortunately. And it's because of those kind of hot topic issues where they feel like they're not being heard, the church doesn't care about their stance, it's just being run by people that are much older. And it's definitely frustrating to hear my peers say that, because this is the church that I grew up in, this is the church that's, taught me so much, and at a time when, there are so much hot topics and controversies and things like that, it is difficult to kind of, reconcile, what we as young people believe with what the church is saying, and it is a challenge. And I think one of the things that could help avoid that maybe is I had the honor of going to the NAD year-end meetings last year to represent my university as well as the other university presidents, and we got to speak on women's ordination or, LGBTQ plus, matters and things like that. And we felt like we had a voice, and that empowered us to stay. Knowing that people cared, knowing that people wanted to listen to us, that we were important, that they valued our opinions so much to the point where they actually chose 2 presidents to sit on committees to represent the young people. And that's important to us, just to be heard. I think the church has definitely hurt me in certain aspects and in certain ways, but I also feel like that has been also the place where I was able to learn Jesus for myself, and not just depend on the church to teach me who God was. And at a point where I felt like, I might have left the church, I do feel like people in the church welcomed me, and that made me stay. So being welcoming, being kind, even if somebody makes a mistake, even if it's a very public mistake, I feel like the church sometimes, they let that person fall through the cracks, but I feel like that's the person that you need to pay special attention to, the person that you need to reach out to the most. And that person might stay because of your efforts. And that's what happened to me, and I will forever appreciate the people that reached out to me when I was at my lowest and when I was hurting. So that's something that's very dear to my heart.
Chaplain Duawne, I'm very interested in your insights. Share with us your wisdom.
I first want to say I believe relationship with God is key, because whether the denomination is doing what you think it should or not, the relationship with God should not suffer. And so I wonder if the ones who are leaving, if they're leaving the church or if they're leaving God. I think we need to make a distinction between that. And when you look at our church is very divided. And it's obvious, but it's not spoken of very much. We're racially divided. We're divided by class. We're divided by economics. And we're divided by cultures. And that's not okay. Because I don't know where the white heaven is. I don't know where the black heaven is. I don't know where the Hispanic heaven is. It's heaven. And if we can't figure this out here, we don't get a chance to figure it out anywhere else. So these things, I'm passionate about that. I want to see us unify. And that comes with sacrifice. You have to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. You have to be able to say, well, I don't necessarily agree with certain things, but I love you because you're my brother. I love you because you're my sister. I want to see that be our home base. Love and acceptance. There's a lot of things that I've done. There's a lot of things that all of us have probably done that would separate us from church, but it never separates us from the love of God. And so can we all operate that way? If we do that, I think if we loved students, and if we loved elders, and if we loved all the different races and ethnicities, we would not have such a falling away, no matter what age you are. That's just how I feel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you've got a speech, Sara?
No, I think that was really spot on, because I feel like a lot of times with us young people, it's like, am I still Adventist if I eat pepperoni pizza? Like, am I still Adventist if I wear jewelry? Will I still be accepted, And I love that, because I feel like at the end of the day, it does come down to having a deep relationship with God and seeing how that plays out in your life. And yeah, that was just so well put. I love the way you said that.
I also had a comment on what you had said earlier. Actually, both of you, touching on diversity, and you had mentioned that as well, and also on the individuality that I think we forget many of the times because we're like, oh, the church. At the end of the day, it's us. So, and you said something very important, how, at times where people have made mistakes, but it was individuals that came up to you or individuals that, go out of their way, and they are the church at the end of the day. So what do you make of those individuals? They're exceptions? No, they are the church. So, and many of the times when we talk about the church, we have a specific idea in mind, all the policies and things we don't like. But when we find Chaplain, Starling, or people that we like, they're like, oh yes, so-and-so, we individualize people. They're no longer the church. It's just, so-and-so is good. So, and I think a lot of that comes with us understanding that at the end of the day, it's us. We are the hands and feet of Jesus. We are the church.
Let me ask you, thanks for your honesty and your sharing, valuable insights. The early church, they too wrestled with the differences. I think it's in Acts chapter 6, where the Greek widows weren't doing quite as well with the food bank, but the Hebrew widows were getting first choice, so to speak. And so they wrestled with that and they rectified it. Looking at the church, and the church is big, like over 20 million people. And there are some people who rigidly believe that the Bible teaches that women shouldn't be ordained, that LGBTQIA issues are cut and dried in the Bible. And while there's a love for people in that community, their behaviour isn't necessarily endorsed. How do we bridge that gap though, where people are so entrenched with opposite views to yours? How do you intend to in a local church in the future to have fellowship with people who are of those opinions? What can your generation do? Can I ask you that question?
Yeah. Well, I would say this. One of the biggest takeaways I took from the conference we had done at Washington Adventist University was in regards to uniformity and unity. And we arrived at the conclusion that many of the times we focus so much on being uniform that we forget that we can be united without being uniform. And that comes to talk about the diversity that we have, the different cultures and race. And it's something so beautiful. God created that. And, the different conferences that we have and everything, different churches, like just in Tacoma Park, Chaplain Starling was mentioning earlier, you have Latino church, you have African American church, you have all, different people grouped in different things. But, talking about the church of the future, for me, what I would see is, and sometimes, we see it as a place of giving people platforms so they can express in the way they feel better, or they can, just be with those of the like them. But I think that exposure brings familiarity and it brings unity, because many of the times it's not that Latinos worship differently than African Americans or whites or whatever it is. Sometimes it's just that the fact that we are not exposed to each other, we don't understand those things. And I don't know if you wanted to comment on that.
To me, when the other is known, when we're breaking bread with the other,
yes,
when we're eating together, fellowshipping together, to me that builds tolerance.
Yes. And I don't know if you have ever been in a situation where people say, for example, oh, I'm African, so I can speak on that. Oh, Africans are such and such and such, but not you, Naomi. And the only difference is because they know me and they do not know the other person. So if they knew every single African, they would change their statement, and of course that is impossible. So that goes to say of, not make assumptions based on, the
Stereotypes.
stereotypes and stigmas that we already have in our minds, prejudice. Because at the end of the day, as we said, exposure brings enlightenment. Because once you're exposed to something, you're like, oh, I used to think that, there was so much difference, because God is the one who created, everything came from Him. So at the end of the day, if we put that in our mind, we will realize that we're not that much of a different. It's just it's a same gift, but in a different wrap.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to add to what you said. You said when we eating the same foods and it builds tolerance. I feel like it builds community more than tolerance, because I think we've kind of tolerated each other's differences, but we haven't accepted each other's differences, and we haven't celebrated each other's differences. That's what I'd like to see.
Yes.
I'd like to see us celebrate each other and not just tolerate each other.
Thank you. Yeah.
This summer,
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to serve as a chaplain at Washington Adventist Shady Grove Hospital. And through that experience, I learned that talking with people on the sick bed every day, several sick people every day, that we're much similar than we are different. And trying to understand the meaning behind what we do. I think we should not see each other as enemies, even though we disagree. And it's interesting because our generation is always crying out for tolerance. But if you actually look at our generation, I think we are one of the most intolerant generations, which is such a paradox. We cry out for tolerance if you agree with us.
Yeah.
I think that God should unify all of us, and we need to stop. I'll reiterate this point. We need to stop looking at each other as enemies. I personally believe that women should be able to be ordained, but I also know that there's other people in the world that are Adventists that don't believe that, and I can't criticize them and say that they're wrong or that they're not working in the gospel framework. But what I can say is allow me and those who agree with me to work inside of our conscience.
Yeah.
I have.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Sarah. Go ahead.
No, and I think it's important to allow people to have that choice. I think, like Naomi mentioned, a lot of times we value uniformity, but forcing people to like follow what you think, or not, or being like, oh, you're wrong if you choose something else, or it's incorrect, and there are a lot of things that are very black and white, but I think there are a lot of things that aren't as black and white, and I feel like having choice is important. Like God even gave choice, in the Garden of Eden, and did it work out? Not for us. But choice is important, and I feel like a lot of times we forget that. And I think everything should be through the basis of love. Even when you disagree with somebody, do it with love. And like Naomi mentioned, even Jesus sat with Zacchaeus, who was a tax collector. Nobody liked him. Nobody wanted to hang out with him. But Jesus saw it fit to sit with him and eat with him. And that's, I feel like, what our mentality should be. It's something that we should do, and we forget that all the time. We're just like, oh, this person doesn't do this. It's wrong. I'm not going to associate with them, and I don't like that. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Right.
And I just don't feel like that should be our approach to this issue.
Yes, and I was gonna go a different route, but the Holy Ghost was like, sister, this is what you gotta say. So here I go. And I'm taking this class this semester. It's African history and culture, all these things. And one pattern that I realized, it just clicked me. It was epiphany moment. I was like, wait a minute, like, whoa, it just hit me. It was that, we have different countries, of course, they all have their different political systems and everything. But it so turns out that the only place where we're obliged, in a sense, of forgetting our culture, our cultural identity, is when we connect to Christ, our religion. So many times we find, instead of, religion reinforcing, appreciating, and celebrating who you are culturally, that identity is forgotten because it is no longer I who live, but Christ is in me. Of course, that is what we aim for. But I don't think that God took so much time into creating such diversity so it can be forgotten. I think he created it with a purpose. And as Sara was speaking, and Jorge actually, what you were saying, about what you believe and you don't condemn people who don't believe like you, that is so powerful because we have matriarchal societies, we have patriarchal societies, but nobody's going after them and be like, no, around the world, we need to have matriarchal, patriarchal societies. We respect that. And we have democracy, we have, different other forms of government, but by no means are we trying to make the whole world uniform and the same. And I think in the same way, the church is able to survive. And perhaps we have this fear of, we won't be able to survive. But I think that there is so much power in it. And that is why it is so important. It kind of reminds me of the Holy Spirit and its role. Those two things are so important and so powerful that I feel like there is such a setback and holdback because God knows how powerful that is. Imagine us celebrating, because that takes us away from having all this different, all of this division, and that is what happened in the Garden of Eden. Satan divided to conquer. But us unifying, we will have a common goal and we'll be moving so much faster towards what God has for us, that it will be so powerful and empowering in so many ways. So definitely, that idea of coming out of our comfort zones and allowing ourselves to be exposed and embraced more than tolerate, as we spoke here today, and appreciate that, because that is how we're going to be able to move forward.
What you've prompted and what's coming through for me is what unites us is far more than what divides.
Yes.
Yes.
Did you know
for sure.
what can bring us together? There's a huge spectrum there that Jesus brings us together. And what we choose to let divide us can be so minor in comparison to what brings us together. I would just want to thank you. Thank you for your ministry.
Thank you.
Chaplain, what you're doing at the university. God is blessing and may it continue to be so.
Thank you.
And to Naomy, Jorge and Sara, thank you for how you've served as students and how you're preparing yourselves to serve and to be connected in the church in the future. Thanks so much. And I'll be interested and watching eagerly how your lives develop. And may God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on Ministry in Motion today, where we explored nurturing and connecting with young adult graduates. We had the guests Naomy Rodrigues, Jorge Mendoza, Sara Devaraj, and Chaplain Duawne Starling. These are the important take-home points from today's program. First of all, involve young adults in local church ministries. Secondly, Adventist education helps students build faith. Thirdly, Adventist teachers have influence beyond the classroom. Young people are frustrated about how the church handles its challenges. Our fifth point was, when young adults are heard, valued and welcomed, they're more likely to stay. The sixth point was, congregations and young adults need to practice tolerance and patience. And the final point, fellowship builds community and bridges. Once again, thanks for joining us on Ministry in Motion. Until next time, may God richly bless you and your ministry.